What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Duel Today. Today, we interviewed Gabrielle Pimstone. She's an energy coach, and her focus is to push people towards change. Maybe you're right on the cusp and you need some extra motivation. She's the person to go to. And her main message in all of her podcasts is that anyone can make change in life and that it's never too late to make meaningful change. She talked to us today about her meaningful change and gave us some tips for how to make meaningful change in our own lives. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Duel the Day.
We talked on a bushwalk, listened to a podcast, and that sparked the transformation.
So it's great to officially meet you.
Likewise.
In person, but and kind of going through some of the stuff on your profile and whatnot. I was really just interested. You talked about that moment in your life that you had a reignition of purpose and of passion. And I'm not exactly sure what your background in the corporate world was for 20 some years. But obviously you made a pretty significant transition. I'm always interested in those transitions and how they came about and what led up to that, or if it was a spontaneous thing and you figured it out afterwards. But I'd love to hear a little bit about that, and we can branch off of that and go from there.
That sounds great. All right. Well, my background in corporate was psychology, organizational psychology. So it's not a total turnaround, but the environment's completely different. And I've added a different modality, which is energy work and energy mastery. But, I was in the corporate world for 27 years. I had an incredible career. And it was actually a no-brainer when it came to deciding what I was going to do at university. It was a no-brainer that I was going to do some form of psychology because I've always been interested in the human psyche. And I studied psychology and then got into the corporate world. And a lot of the work that I've done over the 27 years has been about human transformation. And that to me is really exciting because the combination of human transformation with a psychology lens and healing with a spiritual lens really comes together nicely in my practice to give people a holistic experience. Now, the career that I had was wonderful, it was incredible. I flourished until about 5 years before it came to an end. It was in actually about late, probably 2018, I started to feel a sense of discontent. I was a senior leader, a lot of pressure, and I've lived with anxiety all my life. So I've just added to that. And I just stopped finding the joy in work. I started seeing things in the corporate world that I knew about, but never really triggered or affected me. So things like corporate politics. I'd always been intricately involved in politics because of the work by role and function. I was required to step into that space and facilitate conflict, misunderstanding, all of that kind of stuff. But I started to experience it in a way that felt toxic and really heavy. And the other thing that started to show up, which I knew about but never really impacted me, was corporate bureaucracy. Getting anything done took so long. And I started to question the impact that I was able to make when things took so long, and actually trying to effect whole system change in organizations of 50,000, 60,000 people is limited. So then in 2020, during the pandemic, I was in a senior leadership role in a bank, couldn't get more dry than what I was doing. And I was overwhelmed with anxiety, trepidation. I mean, I was working from home most of the time. And, even, Sundays, the thought of dialing in to the office via Zoom on Monday made me sick. And I woke up on Sunday morning with this dreadful feeling of anxiety, dread, trepidation, all of that. And I'm not over exaggerating. And I went off on a bushwalk, listened to a podcast, and that sparked the transformation. So to your point initially, Tyler, it wasn't immediate, it'd been building up. But when I heard this podcast, it landed in such a profound way that that's what catapulted me to take action.
Awesome. And thank you for giving me just a layup of a follow-up question to that. What did you hear in the podcast that really sparked your switch?
Well, to you, it might sound really ordinary, but I had one of those aha moments, as Oprah calls them. I was listening, it was actually an Oprah podcast, and she was interviewing an ordinary person a woman, a mother, whose daughter had been involved in a really bad car accident, I don't know, years before. The young woman at the time actually had to learn how to walk again. It was a really stressful period, but she'd since made a full recovery, had got married and was expecting her first baby. So the woman being interviewed was about to become a grandmother for the first time. It was a really joyful moment in her life, but she couldn't actually lean into the moment. She kept waiting because of the trauma, kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. It was those words that made me really, I almost kind of stopped the walk. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because though that was me. I'd been living for decades since my father died when I was 9, living with this burden of always waiting for the other shoe to fall. And I thought about that day, this invisible spiritual prison that I'd been living in for decades. Bars were invisible, but they were, things like grief, anxiety, fear of loss, all the things that had kept me trapped. And I made a decision that day that I wanted to leave that prison behind. I wanted to actually free myself from the shackles of anxiety and, grief and all the things I've been living with for so long. So it was a simple story, but one that had profound meaning for me.
That's excellent. I know my mom has actually showed me some stuff with Oprah that's very profound. I've watched several of her Super Soul Sunday episodes, and she has a lot of interviews with incredible people, and a lot of the topics are extremely deep and really touching. So definitely recommend those, and I can see why they had a pretty deep impact. But it also sounds like you had some either events that happened in your childhood, like you said, with the passing of your father, but also that was there any type of connection or experience that you had with energy medicine or what you got into after hearing that podcast?
Well, actually, I had no experience with energy work or energy medicine. I come from a long line of Western doctors. My late grandfather was a general practitioner. My late father was a professor of endocrinology. My brother is, in cardiology, a physician. So, and then my childhood sweetheart, who I was with for many, many, many years, he is an anesthetist, and I went through medical school with him. So I had no background in this, kind of woo-woo out there stuff. And I still believe very much in modern medicine. And the way that I work is more complementary. So people might come to me with a pattern of behavior, an identity that doesn't fit them anymore, just dysfunctional ways of being in the world, emotional distress. And I work with them. Sometimes that manifests physically, sometimes emotionally. I work with them and in tandem. Sometimes I do it on my own, but I always recommend, if it's physical, to work in tandem with a medical practitioner. And I use it more as a complementary adjunct to modern medicine. I wouldn't, a lot of people who do the work that I do use it or sell it as, the answer to everything. I still have deep respect and regard for modern medicine. I do have the tools that can work with physical ailments, and I work with things like, migraine headaches. Like I cured my own migraine headaches which is really just trapped energy, actually, aches and pains. I've done a number of sessions on people just before going into surgery. I worked on someone who was diagnosed with cancer and was going in to have surgery followed by chemotherapy. And I worked to really raise and elevate their energy to prepare, I guess, in a preparation for what was going to happen. But some of my colleagues and friends, they do this as the only thing. I'm a little bit hesitant to do that.
I feel like there's definitely a balance in everything. And I think the way I see energy medicine and modern medicine is that as humans, we're still learning about the human body and how everything really works. We had a podcast recently with a doctor, and he asked, like, if you were to read all the books in Harvard Medical School, how much do you think you would really know about the body? And it's only like 3%, right? So it's really not a lot. So I do think that there is balance, and it's cool that you found that.
Yeah. I'm just a firm believer. I've always worked in an eclectic way. So stacking different modalities, I think that's really healthy. But I will say I read something not so long ago in recent months that I think it's the Cleveland Clinic or one of those big hospitals, could be Johns Hopkins. They actually, if you go onto their website, they are offering Reiki, which
nice.
is a form of energy as a complementary modality. A lot of them are. And so I think there's more and more of a move towards integrative medicine, and an acknowledgement that the mind and body are intricately connected. You can't really separate them. So it's a lovely trend. And I'm seeing more and more of these big institutions embrace more alternative methods of healing, like mindfulness, Reiki, acupuncture, all those kinds of modalities.
That's excellent. Sorry, I didn't know if you had a second question to yours. I kind of went off on a little tangent there.
No, you're good. Keep going if you got something.
Yeah, no, I think the one thing I did want to ask was kind of focused on some of our target audience. We do try and talk to men on a decent basis, or some of the problems that men may go through. And one of the things that I've felt personally in the past, and also what I've noticed with friends around, is like, I think it's difficult for men to talk about energy stuff, or at least accept that it's something to pay attention to. Do you find that with your clients, or is that a normal hurdle for you as well?
Well, actually, not so much for me. Well, a couple of things I want to say. My practice used to be mainly women, almost exclusively women, and that's changed in the last few months. So that's an interesting shift. The second thing I want to say is that it's more of a self-selecting process. So people know what I do, they know what I stand for. And if they give me a call, then they're either being really referred on to me and people have really endorsed me, or they truly, truly embrace this. But, the whole concept of skepticism is an interesting one. And we touched on, some of the answers to it earlier when we spoke about the move towards more integrative medicine and what some of the big hospitals are doing. But I want to say that with deep respect to modern medicine, to Western medicine, that these kinds of practices have actually been around for thousands of years. Acupuncture, all of these, kind of alternative healing practices. And they haven't gone through pharmaceutical trials. They've actually survived and endured through what we call clinical observation. So a person or a patient will come to you presenting with particular experiences, undergo an alternative healing modality, and then feel better, and the outcomes are quite tangible to them and to the practitioner. So that's what we call clinical observation. And I think, when people do ask me about skepticism, I always say that just because it hasn't gone through pharmaceutical trials doesn't mean it hasn't gone through rigor. And it's endured over thousands and thousands of years. And but I also say to people that healthy skepticism is good, and your mind doesn't have to be on board for this stuff to work. So give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find that it's easier to talk about energy to women than it is to men? I know you said it, your practice is primarily women, at least for the most part until recently, but have you noticed that outside of your practice, or have you heard that from any of your colleagues or anything like that?
Yes, I think, and I'm going to be really generalizing here. I think, the whole psychology field, self-help, I think women probably find it a little bit easier to put up their hands and say, I need help, can you support me? Than men have been programmed or conditioned to do. So, yeah, I would say that it is skewed. My following on social media is predominantly women. Most of my colleagues, it's the same thing with them. But I think that's changing if I look at the demographic of my clients, and that's more important than social media following, because these are people who are prepared to really put their money where their mouth is shifting. But I think it's still heavily weighted towards the fairer sex.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
at least from what I understand, I don't know if you feel the same way, Gabrielle, but it doesn't matter if you're male or female. These practices can definitely help you change the way you experience life. They could definitely help you heal and transition and just understand things differently. So,
It
yeah,
really does. It really does. And in my experience, working with human transformation for a long number of decades now, that you can sit in talk therapy for decades, as I did, and gain magical insights about yourself and be a whole lot more self-aware. But what was the case with me and a number of people who've come to me as clients is that self-awareness doesn't automatically translate into shifting the dial in your life. I was still stuck and trapped in severe anxiety, even though I'd sat and spoken about my dad's death for, I don't know, two more decades with a number of different psychologists who were excellent at their profession. The thing with energy healing is the way that it works is I will talk to the person about what's up. We'll do some excavation and digging, and I'll bring my psychology background to bear when I'm doing that. So, people need to understand what's going on, what's happening for them. There's a measure of relief and release that happens when you understand something. But what I then do with that awareness is when I'm working on the energetic body, I look for and I find the energetic root of that issue. And it can be lodged anywhere in the chakra system or in the physical body. And once I find that energetic root, it could take one or even a few more sessions, I'm able to release it. And when you release the energetic inception point of an issue, everything shifts. It shifts quickly and it shifts more permanently, which is why I love this modality so much. And in combination with psychology, you get a holistic understanding of what's going on for you, but then the tools and techniques enable very rapid and permanent release, which is ultimately what most people are after.
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
and the way, so, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm going to try and describe what you just said using life coaching words and terms, because from what I was taught, it's very similar, but just I'm going to use some different words. So more or less what it sounds like is you're getting the client to understand their associations. So if they listen to a song and certain emotions come up, they're really honing in on those associations. They're understanding them better and they're being able to see them from a different perspective, and in doing so, that creates a new source of energy, right? Like if you listen to a certain song and your association with that song is all negative, 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 but then you listen to it from a different perspective, that song can start to give you power. So in a way, is that what you're doing with your clients, kind of breaking down those associations, or is it something else?
Well, associations are an important thing. And, what you've said is absolutely true. But the way that I work is that people will come to me with a pattern in their life. So I'll give you just an example of that. So let's say somebody just has always struggled to make money, okay, or to make a go of their career, or to hold on to friendships or relationships, or to sleep, or, but there's a pattern somewhere in their life that they can't quite fix, they can't really understand it, but it's been bugging them, dogging them for a long time. They'll come to me with that pattern. And then for the first kind of session or so, if I'm doing coaching, I'll work with them to understand what's going on. And we'll have a dialogue and inquiry. I'll ask them questions. I'll go through reflection. And we'll just have a normal kind of conversation, like in a normal coaching setup. And they'll get some things to do when they go home, and then we'll meet up again and we might just dig a bit deeper. Once I'm clear on what's really going on with the person, I then do energy work on them. So what that means, and most of my clients are actually, they are remote. Most of them are not in Sydney where I live. I use a particular modality which allows me to bring their energy. We've got different bodies. We've got a physical body, but we've also got an energetic body, which consists of our aura, our meridians, our chakras, all the things we've heard about. I'm able to bring the energetic body in front of me. All right. I'm able to transport it, if that makes sense. And then I work on their energetic body as if they were standing in front of me. And what I do at every time is I read their chakra system. I go, we read, say, all the way up to the crown chakra, and I'm doing kind of hands-on healing on an energetic body. And when I'm feeling sensations, I'm identifying things that are happening, I'm clearing blocks, and I will look for that root, okay? And I might have to, what that does, when I'm reading the chakras, it might take me back into their childhood. And I often do childhood healings, inner child healings. I'll go back on the timeline to them as a child. I'll read the energy system there, and I'll identify something that's happened to them. For example, I was healing somebody, and a man, and I was doing a childhood kind of reading. One of his chakras led me there, and I saw him actually sitting as a young boy in the dust. And he was all alone and almost kind of self-soothing. And when I came out of it and we did a debrief, he described that experience because he said that was him. Once, when he was about 4 or 5 years old, he ran out of church. Something had happened, I can't remember the trigger. And he took himself off and he sat on a kind of a dust road on the side of the church. And he was gone for a while. People didn't know where he was. And so then we spoke. So I released whatever it was. And then afterwards we spoke about what was the trauma and how does the trauma show up? Does it show up in the way you think, the stories you tell yourself, your emotional, if you've got emotional blockages, there's something around your identity that's not working as a result of that. So I clear the block. I don't have to understand it deeply when I'm doing it. Afterwards, we then work cognitively with what's happened. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that is an incredible example. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, I know a little bit about energy medicine just because my mom has learned about it, and so she's left me nuggets and stuff, but I haven't looked into it and I haven't gone through a practice like what you just described, but that I could definitely see how that would be very impactful. So thank you for that example.
No, you're very welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, no,
you look like
super.
I've just been speaking gibberish.
I got you.
No, it's great, and honestly, like for me, when I hear you tell that story, I absolutely believe you. I know like this happened, but at the same time, it's kind of like if you're leading with that to somebody that is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna bring your energy body out from you, and I'm gonna touch it and move things out of it, right? And I'm really oversimplifying it and probably making it sound bad. So I apologize for that. But it's and just in relaying the power of that, because in my eyes, you sit in a really interesting and powerful position. And I love how much you respect the traditional medical industry right now. Myself, it's and I don't want to just go one side or the other because there's a lot of people in the middle that want to really do well, but so much of it is symptom seeking and symptom suppression. And that's not all on the doctor's fault. It's a lot on the patients because they don't want to talk about their lifestyles. They don't want to talk about all the bad habits they have. They want the
Exactly.
pill that gives them relief from their symptoms. And it just so happens that the doctors can turn people out really quickly that way and also make money that way. So it's kind of like who's really at fault here. But I you sit in such a interesting position to me, because not only can you help with those symptoms, but you're actually talking to people about you're asking, like you said, it's how are you doing? What's going on? Questions that most doctors or some doctors may not ask their patients. And so in my eyes, you and your colleagues and everyone that works in that modality should be almost that first line of defense, right? Like if somebody's starting to have a problem, and I'm sure you can speak to this way more than I can. But I think there's so many symptoms that we can have or that can show up that are just merely just generated from our nervous system or from our mind or from just where I saw
Or
something or
trapped
read
energy.
something. Yeah, that we can
Yes.
almost think our way into being sick,
Yes.
right? We
Yes.
have all of these
Yes.
crazy things. So like I'd love if you could speak to that a little bit, because
I'd love to.
I just you sit in a fascinating position to me, to be able to really um help everybody and just be like that. And you with your background, like, okay, this person needs some serious medical intervention, right? Like I'm sure that there's cases where that might come up to where, okay, this might be out of my wheelhouse, but I think
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
lot of good that people could experience if they just went to you or
Yes.
somebody else that does what you do first.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Firstly, thank you so much for shining a light on that. I do appreciate it. I'll give you a couple of real examples to talk about what you're describing. And the one I'll start with myself. Okay, so I've mentioned that I used to suffer from bad migraines. I often used to wake up with them in the morning. And I wasn't shy to take 2 Neuronol every time. I don't know what the equivalent is, or Migrel, what the equivalent is with your pharmaceuticals in America. But I had these terrible morning migraines, and if I didn't take a tablet, they would actually go. They would turn from a bad burning headache into a full blown migraine where I'd get sick, and I'd be debilitated for a few days. When I started this, when I was training to become an energy master, it was a year and a half, 3 levels. I can't remember exactly when. I don't know if it was in the first few months, probably. I noticed that my headaches stopped. And what I realized was happening, what I learned was happening was the reason I was waking up with him in the morning is I would be dreaming and doing kind of work at night in my unconscious state. But I wasn't I'd be doing work, but my energy wasn't flowing properly through my body. So there'd be a lot of trapped energy in my third eye, which is exactly where I got my migraines. When I started clearing my energy and circulating it, moving it, I actually stopped getting those migraines. And as I'm talking now, I'm thinking, shit, I'm going to bring on one. What's the bet? This week
We
I'll have
don't
one,
want
but I
that.
haven't. But I still, whenever I travel, I pack my medicine with me just in case. But that's an example of the shift that I was able to make away from headache tablets. I wasn't anti them, but no, I no longer had to use them, and obviously that's better. The other story is I did some work on someone for about 4 months, maybe 5 months. They have a mix of psychiatric conditions and anxiety, depression, different kinds of anxiety. And in my opinion, and I think in their opinion, they probably have been over-medicated. They're on a cocktail of psychiatric drugs. And this person is on so many drugs, not because their psychiatrist says you've got to be on it, but because they're so terrified of their illness and of having a relapse or breakdown or going into hospital. Wow. And so I worked on them for 4 months. And at the end of it, they reduced 3 of their medications by, I don't know, half. And so that to me is that an incredible outcome? They'll always be on psychiatric medication, and that's okay. But to reduce, and they were presenting when I initially started working on them as quite zombie-like. They were over-medicated, and they're just more energized now. That kind of robotic look and way of speaking has gone because their medication has been reduced. So those would be the kinds of stories that I tell in relation to what you've just mentioned, Tyler.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for telling those with that. And yeah, no, it seems just such a at least for me and the people that I talk with on a regular basis and some of the social circles that I'm in, this topic, this modality, like it's not in the repertoire. It's not in the dictionary. What in regards to that, is that just a location thing? Is it because like you said, these practices have been around for thousands of years. Do some people, do you think, go into them and experience them, but they don't like to talk about it because people might think that they would make fun of them for visiting the energy healer, right? Like that's
potentially.
It is. It is interesting because I would love it if it was more like popularized, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
And I'm sure you would too. But so well, how do we get to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a little bit of a mission to normalize it. That's the word, I think. And the only way that I'm doing it is to show up. I mean, I think I present as normal and rational. I'm not that out there person with a crystal ball. I'm actually really grounded, built a great business. I'm not living in the ethers, and I think I'm relatable because I've worked in the corporate world, and, more and more people that I meet are as relatable doing a form of this. Like, for example, my brother, the doctor brother, one of his school friends also went through medical school with him and landed up branching out. He does integrative medicine. He brings modern medicine, combines that with mindfulness, And so that's a very normal doctor who is branched out into kind of meditation, geometric breathing, all the things that wouldn't be part of your lexicon, or actually mine even. And and there are lots of examples of that and I think I'm just showing up in the way I am, hoping that people will see it. You don't have to be out there to be doing this. But I think a lot of podcasts are also helping with that. The Super Soul Sunday that you mentioned earlier, Nico, is an example, because Oprah, as many podcast hosts who are into self-help, also have a bit of a spiritual bent, and they're going there. And I think that just allows more and more voices to come to the fore, and that's the way we normalize it. But it's with every movement, with everything, it's a slow process. I became a vegetarian when I was 11. Nobody around me was vegetarian. Nobody. I had a love for animals, and now it's commonplace. In Australia, if you go to a restaurant, they give you a vegetarian and vegan menu as well. So it's just takes time.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think there's a couple of examples that I want to share, both to you, Gabrielle, but also to our listeners. And for me, this doesn't necessarily have to do with energy healing, but what I want to try and showcase here is that there's a lot of things that happen in life that we don't fully understand. And I think when people look into things like energy medicine, they might be able to understand those things even more. Like we've all had gut feelings or followed our instinct at some point. There's a tie to energy medicine when it comes to that. So the story that I want to mention is my grandfather on my mom's side passed away almost 10 years ago now. And shortly after he passed away, I went down to his funeral and I took back a couple hats with me. A couple of years after that, my mom went to, I can't remember if it was a shaman or something like that, but she wanted to talk to someone to heal, to understand what was going on, or at least like be able to connect with her father or anyone like that. And in that session, the instructor that she was with said that your father wanted to tell your son, so me, that he liked his selection in hats. How is this lady supposed how is that lady supposed to know that? And that message in particular was extremely strong to me. And the other thing that is crazy, which this will blow your mind, Tyler, is that towards the end of the session, the lady was like, there's someone else that's coming into the room or whatever. It's a man dressed in a military outform. And my mom like doesn't have any military people on her side of the family. And so she was like, what this, she had to think for a second. It was my grandfather on the opposite side of the family who was, again, sending a message to me and to probably Tyler as well, and to that part of the family. So I think that type of event or that moment that my mom described to me just shows me that there's different things in life that we do not understand, but there's obviously something there. And what you're doing attacks the root cause of those energy sources and problems that people may be having in life. And that is much better than what some of modern medicine is doing today with just dousing the symptoms with pills. So, yeah, I
that's
want to share that.
interesting. I mean, it's a beautiful example. I'll share one. Years and years ago, I went to see like couple of mediums, because when after my dad died, I said to my mom, I want to go and see a medium, and she said, no way. So when I got older, I just kind of dabbled a bit, and I went to see this one person who I sat down with her. And I'd never met her. A friend of mine had said, just go and see her. She knew my first name and my mobile number. And the way she worked was to hold your hands. She closed her eyes and she kind of did her reading. And then she said to me, there is a middle-aged man, he's graying, he's highly esteemed. Now, Rylas was my late father. He was a world-renowned professor of medicine. He was very well known, highly esteemed. He wants you to know that when your brother was in that car accident and he nearly died, he brought him back. Well, my eldest brother, not the doctor, but two brothers, the eldest brother was once in a terrible car accident, and he actually had to be opened with the jaws of life. And when he was on the operating table, he said he had a near-death experience. He felt himself kind of sit up, which obviously he didn't. They were operating on him. It was as if he sat up and was able to survey what was going on, and then it stopped. But that's another example of, even if you knew my name and you knew my father's name, you'd not have known that story. So yes, it's real, and I knew it was real, which is why I went to see her in the first place. But it was a lovely validation.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. And I think that is something that we need to do more of, is talk about it like this, so we can show people that it is a part of people's lives. And I to your point, Tyler, like I do think location is a part of it. Same type of thing with religion. Like if you're born in China or Mongolia, you're more likely to be Buddhist, right? Same type of thing with understanding energy or accepting those practices and things like that. But by talking about it, we can make it more normal here, and I guess the Western world, air quotes, because I think people, just by understanding that energy medicine is a thing and that it works, I think that can help a lot of people.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just to jump in real quick, the near-death experiences thing that you were just talking about, that to me, I saw something a little while ago. It was in a video series about it was called The Search, and it's a Christian backed video series about what are we searching for as humans, right? And kind of the ultimate message is happiness. But the one of the parts of one of the videos is really making this distinction between a physical and a spiritual world. We have both parts, and they talked about some of the documented near death experiences that doctors have attested to, that patients have attested to, and one of the ones I just really remember is somebody being able to after they had their near death experience and then talking about it later, is they were able to see that there was and really detailed out a shoe on the roof of the hospital, and there's no other way that this person could know that that shoe was there, b what it looked like, or anything in the situation had they not been outside of their physical body and able to see it in their spiritual form. And the reason I bring that up is because I think it's a great testament to people that are like on that fence of, oh, all this energy stuff is hoo-woo nonsense and I don't need any of that and that's not going to help me, because they're not accepting the fact that we have that split. There is a physical part to us, and there is a spiritual or an energy to us, whatever the correct word is. And getting people to understand that, I think it is a great segue to normalizing it, like you were talking about. Because if people have that foundation, that they understand that there's those two pieces to themselves, well, it's like, well, hey, I might have some symptomology with my physical body and I have a pill for that, but I have some other healing that needs to happen. And that's where you come in.
And that's how I come in. I'm going to normalize it even more because we've been talking about mediums and astral projection and all that stuff. If you think about even our capacity to dream every night when we go to sleep, if we didn't all dream and I told you I dream, you'd think I was cooked, right?
That's a great point. I had not thought of that before. That's a great point.
So that is if you believe in Jungian psychology, which is what I believe in, it's a deeply spiritual process, dreaming. Where do we go when we dream? What is that? So there's the physical, the stuff we can feel and touch, and then there's the spiritual, energetic aspect of our being. And combining those two is incredibly powerful. It's holistic because what you can do is, as one of you was saying, both of you were saying, you can dig beneath the surface and really heal at the inception point, not just at a superficial symptomatic level.
Yeah.
Definitely
need that.
Yes. And if I'm allowed to shift gears just a little bit.
Yes, go for it.
I'd love, because I know we're rapidly approaching an hour here, and I want to make sure to fit some of these things in. One of the things that I remember reading from some of your messages and on your bio and stuff is a lot of dealing with people that are just kind of stuck or they're in stagnation, and I think that there's some really cool like actionable items that we could hopefully leave people with, just to kind of wrap up. We started out with how you got to where you are now, and kind of hopefully broke down some barriers for people in regards to energy medicine and some of these modalities. And I think it'd be great to kind of cap it off with some actionable items, how they can experience some things themselves, or at least be able to ask some questions about themselves to get them thinking about how this could work in their life. So I don't know if you have some go-to great things, or
Yes.
if we want to work through some, but I'll let you to continue on that.
Great. Okay. Well, Beth, I'd love to answer. I think it's a lovely endpoint because, again, we can normalize it by making it pragmatic, which is what I always try and do. So the way that I work is by looking at 5 different aspects of mastering your energy. And the one is understanding. The other one is protecting your energy because we are absorbing toxic stuff from the outside all the time. The other one is how to clear your energy and how to maintain your energy, manage dips. And the fifth one is how to master your energy. And there are tools and techniques, I guess, under each of those. But, you know, let's start with understanding, because that's, I guess, where everything begins. And that's the ability to really go inwards and have a high level understanding or consciousness about not just your energy levels, but about your blocks, your patterns, and factors that trigger a dip in energy. And so there are, I'm going to keep this, of course, there are out there ways of doing this, but I'll give you the simplest way of doing it. I've actually got an assessment tool, which is very cool. But one of the things that you can do if you're on your own and you have got no background in this to really understand what's going on is this idea of energetic mindfulness. So the capacity to dedicate a minute or two and to ask yourself a really simple question. It could be as simple as, how am I feeling? Or it could be something like, is my energy heavy or light? Just sitting with that and going within. There are other ways that you can go within to understand your energetic state. One way to do that is by paying attention to your language, the words that you use. Speaking to somebody on another podcast earlier who has a tendency, they were saying, or had a tendency to always call themselves an idiot. I'm so stupid, I'm an idiot. Now, if you sat with those words or you journaled them, you try to figure out what's going on, you might find something out about your energetic state. I had a tendency to always say I'm exhausted when I wasn't physically exhausted. That was an entry point into my energetic state, which was burnout, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like I don't have the capacity to deal with what life is throwing at me. So language is another doorway into your energetic state. Sometimes you can pay attention to your thoughts. They're a way of doing that. So energetic mindfulness is something that's accessible and is a very simple tool or practice for us to do daily. If you don't trust yourself to remember to do it, you can set a little alarm clock on your mobile phone, a few times a day, and every time it goes off, that's your cue to just sit within and to ask yourself those simple questions and to pay attention to what's happening inside you. That's so simple.
Yes, it is. It's an excellent practice.
The other answer is to work with your dreams more intentionally. I've been big into my dreams for many decades, ever since I was 8 years old, so like 4 decades now. Because when we dream, we heal, and it's best if you remember your dreams and to make the healing a conscious and exciting process. So a very simple tool to shift from healing being something we leave up to chance to healing being intentional is just before you go to sleep every night. That you shower, you're ready for bed, to just get into a quiet moment where you switch off and you can speak to your dream. I do. And you can say, dream, tonight as I sleep, I'm giving you a fictitious one. Please help me understand why I'm feeling so trapped in my job. Or please help me. That's a diagnostic question. You could also ask a predictive question. You could say, dream, when I go to sleep, show me what it might be like if I take that job. You can ask different kinds of questions to your dream. And you could even do a little ritual. So, for example, if you're are setting an intention about something, to learn more about something related to career, you might take your trusted notepad, put it underneath your pillow and sleep with it. That's just adding the energy into the whole experience. And then when you wake up in the morning, before you do anything, reach for your dream journal or your notepad and just journal what comes up. And sometimes people say, oh, well, I don't remember my dreams. That's okay. The more you practice, the more it happens. And if you don't remember your dream, just write down your felt sense. What are you feeling when you wake up? That's all you need to do. And then keep at it. And eventually you start, it's just incredible. I mean, dream work is a graded practice. By the time you're really advanced, you can practice lucid dreaming, which is when you're asleep and you're dreaming, to actually consciously step into your dream and alter the course of the dream. So you might, if you're having a scary dream and there's this shadowy figure in front of you in your dream, and if you're in a lucid dream, you can step in and you can say, who are you to that figure? And sometimes the figure might turn around and you realize it's not as frightening as what you thought, or it might disappear the minute you address it. So they're advanced forms of dreaming that you can really release blocks very, very quickly with. And I teach all of that.
That's awesome. That's incredible. That's dreaming is one of the things, like, as much as I love going down and exploring different facets of ourselves and our brain and science, somehow dreaming is an aspect that I just haven't touched. And you've made me want to start paying a little bit more attention to it, because as I think about it, I've remembered a lot of dreams that I've had over the course of my life, and it's really interesting to me that there are certain dreams that I have that are, I could swear to you that they are almost the exact same dream that I had when I was like 12. And it's like, it's the same setting, it's the same thing. It's like, it's deja vu, but in dreamland. And it is, it really messes with my brain sometimes. It's like, wait a minute. Like it's enough to experience deja vu in real life, but to then also have it when you're asleep.
It's crazy.
So that's awesome. And yeah, you've sparked my interest to want to at least do a little bit of work with that. But I know we got a couple. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you are going to be doing more work, there are a couple of I'm going to give you just a few prompts.
Please.
Pay attention to place. Place in dream is very important.
Okay.
Sequence of events in dreams is very important. People, what they represent, and repetition. So you might be having versions of the same dream, or the same person might appear in different dreams. Look for themes and just look out for those things. Pay attention to that stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I will definitely do.
And let me know how it
that.
goes.
Yeah, very nice.
Be interesting what to find out from that. But yeah, we got a couple minutes left. Gabrielle, it's been an absolute pleasure being able to talk with you. I feel like, at least for myself, learned a ton from you, and in my opinion, the world is a much better place with you in it. So keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully this all gets normalized. But as we like to, the last couple of minutes, where can people find you? Where can people learn more about who you are, what you're doing, interact with you, the things that you have to offer? Where can people find that stuff and get in touch with you?
Before I answer that, I want to thank you so much for those beautiful words, and also to thank both of you for hosting me, and just hosts in general, providing a platform. You're doing an incredibly, adding so much into the world. So thank you. So your listeners, I'm sure you'll have show notes, can go to my website. What you see over there are how I work. You get a real feel for me, who I am, and also what I offer. And there are various ways to get hold of me, depending on your, preferences. One of them is a 30-minute call with me, catch up, talk about, where you're at, where you want to be, what's the gap, and how you're going to get there. So it's kind of a 30-minute free coaching session. And then if you want, you can follow me on LinkedIn, but that's more of my professional kind of corporate stuff. But all the stuff that's about change, above the iceberg, the rational stuff, it's all there. Gabrielle Pimstone. Otherwise, Instagram, which is gabrielle.pimstone.
Nice. Well, a pleasure to have you. Definitely agree with Tyler and what he said about the world being a better place with you in it. And we appreciate your time today and wish you the best and all the clients that you serve.
Thank you so very much. And to you guys too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.